The tragic end of Chris Henry came after a long string of run-ins with the law. Crime after crime, his life kept spinning further out of control. Every bad decision just added more chaos, and eventually it all came to a shocking and heartbreaking end no one could have imagined. So what really happened? Let's break it down. On December 16, 2009, something truly heartbreaking happened to Chris Henry. He fell out of the back of a moving pickup truck during a heated argument with his fiancée, Lolani Tonga. The two had gotten into a domestic dispute, and during the fight she drove off in the truck. Henry, for reasons we may never fully understand, jumped into the back of it, and somewhere along the way, he fell out and suffered severe injuries. Just a day later, on December 17th, he was pronounced dead at 6:36 a.m. at Carolina's Medical Center. He was only 26 years old. The cause of death was confirmed 2 days later: blunt force trauma to the head. It was a terrible accident, and even though the circumstances were emotional and intense, police found no signs that Lolani had driven recklessly or at a high speed. She wasn't charged with anything, and toxicology reports showed Chris Henry had no alcohol in his system at the time. On the surface, it just looked like a tragic accident after a heated argument. But when doctors and scientists looked deeper into Henry's brain after his death, they made a shocking discovery. In June 2010, researchers at the Brain Injury Research Institute at West Virginia University announced that Chris Henry had been suffering from CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It's a brain disease caused by repeated hits to the head, and it had already been seen in other former football players. What made Henry's case so alarming was that he had never even been diagnosed with a concussion throughout his 5 seasons in the NFL or during his time in college. He was young, athletic, and outwardly healthy, but inside his brain was breaking down. CTE is a disease that's been linked to changes in behavior, mood swings, poor decision-making, aggression, and even depression. In Henry's case, many started to wonder, could this disease have played a role in all the trouble he had off the field? Because truthfully, Chris Henry had a long and messy history with the law. It all started on December 15, 2005. He was pulled over in Kentucky for speeding, and things quickly escalated when police found marijuana hidden in his shoes. On top of that, he didn't have a valid driver's license or insurance. It was his first major brush with the law as a pro football player, and while he pleaded guilty, he managed to avoid jail time. But just a month later, in January 2006, Henry found himself in even deeper trouble. He was arrested in Orlando, Florida, on serious gun charges, aggravated assault and concealment. And to make things worse, he was wearing his Cincinnati Bengals jersey during the arrest. Once again, he pleaded guilty and avoided prison, but the incidents were starting to pile up. Then came April 2006, when Henry allowed 3 underage girls, aged 18, 16, and 15, to drink alcohol in a hotel room he had rented in Kentucky. One of the girls, the 18-year-old, accused him of sexual assault. That accusation was later proven false, and she was actually charged for filing a fake report. But the fact that Henry had put himself in such a questionable situation once again added more fuel to the growing concern around his behavior. Just 2 months later, in June 2006, he was pulled over again, this time in Ohio, for suspected drunk driving. He agreed to take a breathalyzer test, and it showed his blood alcohol level was over the legal limit. The NFL took notice, and in October of that year, he was suspended for 2 games for violating the league's personal conduct and substance abuse policies. While he could still attend team meetings, he wasn't allowed to practice or play during that suspension. It was a clear warning sign. By early 2007, the trouble still hadn't stopped. In January, Henry pleaded guilty to a local violation known as the keg law, which basically involved alcohol distribution and minors. He was sentenced to 90 days in jail, but most of it was suspended. He only served 2 days behind bars. That April, the NFL had enough. They hit him with an 8-game suspension, half the season, for continued violations of league rules. Commissioner Roger Goodell made it clear, one more serious mistake could mean the end of his NFL career. When the suspension was lifted in November, Henry came back strong in a game against the Ravens, putting up nearly 100 receiving yards. But his personal life was still spiraling. Just days before that comeback game, in November 2007, Henry allegedly assaulted a valet attendant in Newport, Kentucky. He was arrested again the next month in Orlando for violating probation from his earlier gun charge. Though he was found not guilty in that case, his name kept making headlines for all the wrong reasons. The final straw came in March 2008. Henry got into an altercation with a man named Gregory Meyer, who was just 18 years old at the time. According to reports, Henry punched him in the face and even threw a beer bottle through his car window. Henry later claimed it was a case of mistaken identity, that he thought Meyer was someone else who owed him money. But the damage was done. The Bengals, finally fed up, released him from the team the very next day. And while Henry would eventually return to the NFL later that year, it was clear that his life, both on and off the field, had been marked by chaos and controversy. Looking back now after the discovery of CTE in his brain, there's a painful question that lingers. How much of his behavior was really under his control? Was his string of arrests, fights, and poor choices the result of a young man struggling with fame? Or was his damaged brain quietly pushing him towards self-destruction? And you might be surprised to hear this, but despite all the off-field chaos, Chris Henry's career had some truly bright moments. Let's take a look back and appreciate the talent and potential he really had. Henry entered the NFL when the Cincinnati Bengals selected him in the third round of the 2005 NFL Draft. From the start, people knew he had talent. He made his professional debut on September 18, 2005, in a game against the Minnesota Vikings. And during that rookie season, he showed fans exactly what he could do. He caught 31 passes for 422 yards and scored 6 touchdowns. Not bad at all for a third-round pick trying to find his place in a crowded receiving group. One of the biggest moments of that rookie year came in the Bengals' first playoff game in 15 years. They were up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and on just their second play from scrimmage, Henry made a massive 66-yard catch. It was a play full of promise, but heartbreak followed. Both Henry and quarterback Carson Palmer suffered knee injuries on that same play. What should have been a game-changing highlight turned into a turning point for the worse. Still, Henry bounced back. In his second season in 2006, he really began to shine. He caught 36 passes, but turned those into 605 yards and 9 touchdowns. That's an average of almost 17 yards per catch, which tells you just how explosive he was down the field. He had a huge game against the Cleveland Browns early in the season, putting up 113 yards on just 5 receptions. And the very next week, he scored 2 touchdowns against the Steelers. He finished that year strong with another standout game in the season finale, 124 receiving yards and a touchdown, again against Pittsburgh. When he was locked in, Chris Henry looked like a future star. But then came the suspensions. In 2007, Henry was suspended for 8 games due to multiple violations of the NFL's personal conduct policy. That was a major setback, and by the time he returned in Week 10, he had a lot to prove. And honestly, he didn't disappoint. In his first game back against the Baltimore Ravens, Henry caught 4 passes for 99 yards. The next week, in a loss to the Arizona Cardinals, he pulled in 8 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown. Despite the late start to the season, he still managed to rack up 343 yards and 2 touchdowns on 21 receptions. He was still dangerous when he got the ball. Unfortunately, things took another dark turn in 2008. After yet another off-field incident, the Bengals decided they had had enough. They officially released him in April, with team president Mike Brown saying Henry had run out of chances. At that point, it seemed like his NFL career might be over. But then came an unexpected twist. In August 2008, the Bengals receiving corps was hit with injuries. Chad Ochocinco, TJ Houshmandzadeh, and Andre Caldwell were all banged up. So despite previously saying they wanted no part of him, the Bengals brought Henry back on a 2-year deal. It was a surprise to many, especially since head coach Marvin Lewis had recently said they had no plans to re-sign him. After serving a 4-game suspension at the start of the 2008 season, Henry returned to the field in early October. His numbers weren't eye-popping, but he still contributed with 19 catches for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was fighting to stay in the game, trying to turn his life around and show that he could still be part of a team. Sadly, in November 2009, Henry's season, and eventually his career, came to a halt after he broke his forearm while making a 20-yard reception against the Ravens. He was placed on injured reserve, and that injury would be the last play of his professional football career. Chris Henry never reached his full potential, but when he was healthy, motivated, and on the field, you could see the star he was meant to be. And that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.